Yo people, welcome back. Now, today's the day where I talk about one of my favorite things, one of my favorite pieces of software ever, and it's going to be Linux. So, what is Linux, first of all? Linux is a free, open source operating system. So, just like Android for mobile phones, just like macOS for desktops and Windows, this is a free operating system. Some mobile phones can run it, but it's mainly used on desktops. Linux is very stable, it's very fast, and again, I keep going back, it's completely free. And if you guys know anything about me, I like free stuff, I like cheap stuff. Let's jump into this one. So again, Linux is a free and open source software. So what that means, it's free, you don't have to pay for it. Now there are some versions of Linux where they do require you to pay. So for example, if you're buying a pro version, you will pay for it. But again, normally every distro I've ever used so far, they do have a free version. It being open source means that if you have the level of skill necessary, you can actually go in and add or remove features that you want from the operating system. And I don't just mean turning stuff on and off. You can actually go in and program things you want to add to the operating system, and you don't have to pay anything extra. What is an operating system, first of all? Because I know I keep going over or using the term operating system. So, an operating system is the software on your computer, phone, or tablet which manages the resources and processes of that system. Quite simply, it's the software that you put other software on top of. So, again, the one that many people might know is Windows 10, Windows 8, for example, Android, iOS, macOS. That's the one that many people are actually familiar with. Why do I think Linux is a really good operating system? I'm going to go through the good and the bad, but the main thing is that it's free. Another thing is that you don't actually have to pay for anything. And I do mention you can go for the pro versions if you want extra features, added bolt-ons that you might find useful. But again, Zorin OS is the one I know of where they actually charge you £40, but that's still a lot cheaper than what Microsoft used to charge for Windows before. So Linux is a free and open source operating system. Free meaning you don't pay anything at all unless you wanted to get the pro versions of software. And open source means that the code base, the actual lines of code that they use to create the operating system, you can actually go in and if you have the necessary skill level, edit that code to add or remove any features that you want to or from the operating system. Now, I know I keep throwing the word operating system around a lot, but what is an operating system? And quite simply, an operating system is a software on your computer, phone, or tablet which manages the resources and processes of that system. So, for example, stuff like file management, memory, general stuff like that. And examples of operating systems would be Windows 10 is probably the one that most people know of, Windows 8 and Windows 7 as well. For mobile phones, we have Android and iOS, or back in the day when I was a child, we have BBM, BlackBerry OS, and we also had Symbian, which was Nokia's operating system. So this is essentially the software that comes with a device that we then install other software onto. That's, I think, a decent way to explain operating systems. Okay, so I'm going to go in and actually speak about some of the good points. And again, these are my own personal opinions based on my experience and maybe a few people around me. This is not a universal thing. This is just my opinion. So please, guys, don't jump on me and kill me, all right? So let's start with the good first. And I did mention the first one already. It's free and open source. And again, that means it's completely free. You don't have to pay for any of this software. You don't have to pay for anything if you don't want to. It's open source. So if you decide, actually, I want to become a software developer, I want to become an operating systems designer or whatever it is, you can actually go in and edit the base code. So they give you a starting template and you can actually go in and put in whatever you want. Next, I have it's well protected against malware. So malware is just malicious software. It's not completely immune to it, but just the way the system was designed means that things you don't get infected as easily as you would on, let's say, a Windows machine. Next one, we have free software or pay what you want. I mentioned that before. However, there are some pieces of software which you don't have to pay for, but what happens is the developer normally explains to you why they think you should pay. And obviously they're doing this stuff for free and they want to keep the lights on essentially. So every time I've downloaded, for example, Elementary OS, or every time I download Zorin OS, I try to donate like £1, right? It's not much, I know, but I mean that's what most, because I don't normally do it for myself. I use it for people who have older PCs. Anyways, I'll get to that later on. Another point for the positives is that it's really stable. They fix things or they remove things that are broken. Unlike some other manufacturers of my operating systems, ergo Microsoft, they just keep bolting on things on already broken operating system. Whereas the versions of Linux I've used in the past, they seem really stable. And if something didn't work in a previous version, it's either fully ripped out or replaced with something else, which is very rare, or they just go in and fix things. Whereas I think Microsoft actually does the opposite. For example, we have what's it called again? Internet Explorer, which has been in Windows for decades at this stage. It stopped working well quite a while ago, but rather than ripping it out from an OS level, they actually just bolted Edge in there. So that's Microsoft Edge, their new web browser. Now, hopefully for Windows 11, they actually rip out Internet Explorer and leave Edge as the main browser and actually rip out some of the older stuff. But I don't think this is going to be done because so many people still use the older versions of the operating systems, and a lot of the features on older systems are tied directly to Internet Explorer. So let's see what happens there. Another positive, it is fast. It is very, very fast. The top 500 supercomputers around the world use Linux. I don't think I need to say anything else. It is really lightweight in many cases, meaning a typical download. Okay, if you guys see my screen here, if I go to download Zorin OS, this is a pro version which you do have to pay for. It's £39, but I normally go for either core or light. I use a light version for much older PCs and a core version for the relatively new ones. If I go to download free, skip to download, it should actually tell me, hopefully it will. Okay, it doesn't. This is a 2.7 gigabyte file to download. Now, Windows 10, the ISO for Windows 10 is closer to 7 or 8 gigabytes if I'm not mistaken. So that's almost, let's just say, 2-3 times as much space for an operating system that does more or less the same thing. Now, I love that, and I think partially this is one of the reasons why it's so fast, because it doesn't have all these features bundled in. You normally get a core or a light experience, and you can bolt on as many features as you want. Another thing, we have a lot more flavors, and the flavors are called distros, meaning distributions. Some of them look like macOS, some look like Windows, and they have variable system requirements, meaning just because there's a newer version, that doesn't mean that because you have an older system it won't work. For example, here on Zorin OS 16 Core, I have the newer version here, which is Zorin OS 16 obviously, and the older version Zorin OS 15.3 Lite. This is for PCs up to 15 years old, and in some cases it will go beyond that. Now, this is really good because it has variable specs. I can obviously put this on a very old PC, and I can put this one on a newer PC, which is really beneficial because sometimes I'm fixing someone's computer. They're really attached to it. They really love it. I put an SSD in there, but even with the SSD, it still doesn't run amazing because everything else is so old. So I normally go for Zorin OS Lite, or I go for Linux Mint non-Cinnamon version, because Cinnamon is the more up-to-date version of that operating system, let's say, or the version that requires the most spec. All right, next we have is very revealing. And what I mean by that, not many hidden background processes. In Windows, if you go to your task manager, you'll see probably a million things running. You can't stop half of them. You can't block some programs. The privacy is not very good on Windows 10. Whereas on Linux, on many distros, their main thing is security and privacy, right? So you can actually go in and block whatever you want, uninstall whatever you want, turn off whatever you want, and it will still function in most cases very well. All right, so next I have the not so good. So the main thing that you'll hear almost everyone complain about when they speak about Linux is the software compatibility. And most organizations use some Microsoft suite or some Adobe suite. There are alternatives. Some might see learning multiple software as a waste of time. I don't, but I fully understand that being efficient when you're at work or when working on stuff is the main thing. So software compatibility is not great with the non-generic stuff. When I say generic, I mean like a Word document, a PDF, an image viewer, or image editor. That stuff is very generic. But when we get to stuff like video editing, I myself, I'm going to edit this on a Windows 10 machine using Filmora X, so Filmora version 10. Now, because there's no Filmora version 10 or any version of Filmora for Linux, I couldn't use the same project on both PCs, on both operating systems. However, something like DaVinci Resolve, which is cross-platform, you might be able to. The only issue I think you might have is the file location of stuff, because I think with Windows they do forward slash, if I'm not mistaken, and Linux do backslash when doing file location things. But other than that, software compatibility isn't the best. It is getting better. Loads of developers are actually moving some of their stuff over to it as well, but everyone's not there yet. If Adobe could move over the Adobe suite without the need of Wine, and Wine is basically a virtual environment where you can actually install Windows or install a program, and it will run there instead of on. Long story short, it's not for everyone. It's kind of complex to use, and it's not the fastest thing ever. Another thing is that it's not so great for gaming. Even though SteamOS on Proton has it's changed this in recent years, it's still overall not the best. Let me explain. Most games are written in Windows, well, not in Windows, let's say, but for Windows. Obviously, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. Not many games are written for Linux. As a result of that, if you wanted to do gaming quite a lot, you would have to get something like SteamOS. SteamOS is the only Linux distribution or distro iPhone that actually is really good with games, and even NVIDIA and AMD drivers as well. I haven't used it myself personally, but I've done quite a bit of research and it looks quite interesting. But it's not great. Proton is really impressive, and I'm going to speak about Proton in my verdict. Okay, so this last point here, graphics drivers are still an issue for some distros. As I mentioned, SteamOS might be okay, but other distributions maybe not so much. Right, so as I said before, graphics not the best. Something like Linux Mint, which is based quite heavily on, I think it's Ubuntu, and we have version 20.2 here. These are probably going to be better off with graphics than, let's say, something like Elementary OS, which is one of my favorite ones, as well as Zorin OS. So these are my top three Linux distributions, which I use regularly and which I actually install on people's PCs just because they're so lightweight, they're so good, they actually look really well. And for example, something like Mint or even Zorin, they look very similar to the Windows user interface where you have a start button, let's say, and you have categories for software. So there's normally Office, graphics, video, networking, internet, and in those categories you can go into, for example, internet, and you will see Firefox or Chrome or an email client. And it's just really simple for people who come from Windows to jump into this and to just do what they need to do straight away. So I got this random message over the weekend. A student of mine messaged and said, "Sir, can we actually try another distro on the PC that we have in lessons?" So I found this old PC from the IT guys. I asked them, "Can I just have it?" I bought an SSD. I have it open at the front of my classroom. So he said to me, "Can we try Kali Linux?" Now I am very suspicious about this because this is a very specific type of operating system. It's not used by, I mean, it can be used for that, but as you can see here, it says Kali Linux, the most advanced penetration testing distribution, essentially hacking. Now, for whatever reason, it could be white hat, black hat, gray hat, whatever it is that you want to do with this, you can do with it. Some people do nefarious things. The PC that we have is not connected to any network, so this is the only reason why I'm actually okay in downloading this. I'm going to show you guys Zorin OS because I already have that on a memory stick, but I'm going to show you guys the general process of how you should or would download one operating system and put that onto a memory stick. However, in this one, I'm going to show you how to download multiple operating systems using a program I found out about recently called mvoe. Let me just show that website. It's mvoe. And what this program allows you to do is to actually install multiple operating systems on a single memory stick. All you have to do is when you finish downloading the ISO, the image file for the operating system, you simply transfer it to the memory stick. I have 2 videos on this channel already which actually walk you through how to use Ventoy, what it is, why I think it's amazing. One video is going to be longer version of that, and the shorter video is going to be just showing you how to use Ventoy quickly. Now, this is a memory stick I currently have with all the operating systems, and currently I've got 7 operating systems on here, and it takes up 23 gigabytes of storage. If I go here, I can see I've got roughly 5.8 gigabytes left over, so whatever I add to this memory stick has to be within that range. So again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to download Kali Linux. Now, you would follow this exact process for any operating system you do want to add. So I'm going to do a download here. Let's see how long this takes. I'm going to do probably bare metal, right? Look at the versions you want, but more than likely, if you're using a desktop, you're going to want bare metal version. Or if you want to actually boot from the memory stick and use stuff just from the memory stick and not having to install anything, you're probably going to want live boot. So I'm going to go to bare metal. I'm going to go to the 64-bit version, and I'm going to go to which one do I actually choose? I actually don't know. I haven't used this in a very long time. It should be installer, because this should be the ISO. So when I download, let's click on recommended. Oh no, let's click on download, sorry, and see what happens there. Yes, this is the ISO file, so that should be fine. I can drag this into the memory stick. I'll come back to you guys when this is finished. Right, so now I have Kali Linux 2021.3 finished downloading. I'm going to go ahead and copy this to the SD card, sorry, to the memory stick. So to do that, I'm going to go to my downloads folder, which I already have open here. And as you can see, it is here. It's Kali Linux. I'm going to rename this. I don't like the way this looks. I'm going to say Kali Linux 2021.3, I think it was. Let me just do -3 so we don't have any file type errors. And now I'm going to open the memory stick again. I think it should already be open. So on one side, I'm going to have Ventoy. And on the other side, where is it? Here. I'm going to simply copy this over. Now again, the entire process of how to do this from start to finish is already on YouTube. So that walks you through again what Ventoy is, how it works, how you actually set Ventoy up. And yeah, so I'm going to come back to you guys in roughly 6 minutes. Alright, so as you can see, I now have Kali Linux on the Ventoy memory stick. When I highlight all of these, I've got 8 items totaling 27.4 gigabytes. I'm going to go ahead and plug this into the machine I'm going to use. I'm going to record the screen from my phone on there, so the quality won't be as good as this one. But hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. You'll definitely be able to hear me. So let's move over to the PC. Alright, so with Ventoy, this is what you'll see sometimes when you boot for the first time. I have an HP desktop, so to get into the HP boot menus is normally F10. But if your boot order was already set to USB first, in most cases it will check USB first. If the USB is not there, it will check the hard drive or the SSD. So you're going to do OK here. Press any key to perform. Okay, yes, you're going to do that. And when this comes up, you need to do enroll key from disk. So that one there. This is okay, Ventoy EFI. You need to do that. And from here, you need to enroll key in Mock Manager. So that one there. You're going to do continue. Then you're going to do yes. And you're going to just reboot. And that should be it. And hopefully when it does reboot, it's going to take you back into that boot section where you can actually go in and start seeing your operating system. So here we go. As you guys can see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 operating systems on this one disk. So those are the 8 I had on there before. Here I've got Elementary OS 6, Kali Linux 2021-3, Linux Mint 20, Manjaro GNOME, Raspbian OS, Ubuntu 20 LTS, Windows 10. I'm probably going to download Windows 11 this week and do a video on that next week. So very soon I'm going to have Windows 11 here as well, and probably remove Ubuntu. I don't actually like Ubuntu that much. And Zorin OS. So I can go ahead and actually boot into any of these except for Windows. and actually use the operating system fully. So I'm going to actually try and boot into elementary OS 6 and see if that works. Try it. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so here we are, hopefully booting into elementary OS. All right, so here we have our setup screen. Select a language, English. Select that. I'm going to do UK. Select that. English UK keyboard, that's fine. Just going to do the default English keyboard. Try demo mode. Yeah, I'm going to try it first. And hopefully this actually allows me to boot into the operating system without having to install anything first. Oh, here we go. Perfect. Wonderful. So here we have elementary OS 6. Now, as soon as you come into this, you'll notice it looks a lot like macOS. Some people like that, some people don't. I personally don't mind it. This is one of the first ones I liked really well the aesthetics of. Mint, as functional as it is not the best looking version of this operating system, right? I think it's either elementary OS for me. Manjaro looks quite good, but I also really like Zorin OS. So down here we have, I guess, the most used applications, or what they think the most used would be. We have a web browser, email client, task manage, a task like a notebook type thing, calendar, music, videos, photos, system settings, and application center, right? I am not actually connected to the internet, so I'm not going to download anything and show you guys that. Top right here, we have our power button, a notifications icon, network icon, and volume. We have the date and time here in the middle, and on the left we have applications. So if I click on this, it actually comes up with all the applications that are pre-installed. And to be honest, it has most of the things that you would need just to get started. It doesn't, however, have what's that called? An Office suite installed, but we can go ahead and install it. I'm not going to show that in this video, but just to show you guys how clean, how simple, how neat this operating system looks. And again, it is very reminiscent of macOS. Even the shortcuts, if I go to system settings, if I go to keyboard, and there should be a shortcut section, even in here, it doesn't actually show control, or because you know on a Mac it has that weird looking key that's actually command. That's what they have in shortcuts for here as well. It actually says command. Let me go back to all settings. This is what it looks like. Again, very reminiscent to a Mac OS system. If I go to system here, it says elementary OS. Oh yeah, it's built on Ubuntu 20, and this is the LTS means long-term support. So I think they normally give you 5-ish years. That's quite a long time to be fair. If I go to hardware, I have a quad-core i5 6500, 3.2 gigahertz of processing power there, 7.7 gigabytes of memory, and 4.1 gigabytes of storage. Okay, so I'm guessing it's probably just using the memory stick storage and not actually the SSD that's in there, which is fine. Firmware, okay, so this needs updating. No, it says up to date, sorry. So this is actually up to date. So this is the SSD I have in there, which is a 240 gig SSD. What else would you want to see? A browser, typical, nothing special here. I normally go ahead and install Chrome, which is on this operating system, or Chromium. Either one works perfectly fine. That's taking a bit of, okay, again, things are moving extremely slow in here because it's running entirely from the memory stick and not from the SSD or the hard drive installed. So typical browser with back, forward, refresh, home, close, and the address bar. And again, this is so similar to a macOS operating system that normally on Windows we have the close buttons on the right hand side, close, minimize, maximize. This time we have them on the left hand side, as a matter of fact. So we have close over here. You can change the order of the buttons. I think there was a toolkit you could download called Gnome Tweaks or something like that, I think it was. What should I do now? Nothing else will really work, but I just wanted to show you guys how good this operating system looks, how simple and clean it is, and hopefully you guys like it. So to shut down, I'm going to go to the power section there. I'm probably going to do a restart and load into Zorin OS. So let's give it a few seconds. All right, here we go. So we're back into the main menu again, and I'm going to load, let's say, which one did I say? Zorin. Zorin OS is probably my favorite day-to-day one, but when it comes to compatibility, it's going to be Ubuntu, Linux Mint, and maybe Elementary as well because it's built on Ubuntu. Let me go to Zorin OS. Let me go to try. So that's the Zorin OS logo flashing down there at the bottom. All right, and this is what Zorin OS looks like. Very similar to Elementor in terms of setup. So I'm going to do try Zorin OS. And should this allow me? Okay, here we go. It's actually bringing me back to the boot screen. Now we're in. Now this is probably a bit more reminiscent to what we're used to, where we have in the bottom right hand corner there we have the time, the date, the power options, and all of that. On the left hand side, we actually do have a start menu kind of. So when we press start, we can see all the sections here. So in accessories, let's see what we have there. We have clock, files, weather, to do, so on and so forth. In games, we do have a few games there. In graphics as well, we might have GIMP. That's the main thing there. This is a Photoshop replacement that's actually really amazing. It's cross-platform as well. So whatever you do on one operating system, you can continue working on another one. Here we have internet. So we have Firefox and Remina. Oh, so that's a remote desktop client. Perfect. So that comes built in for free. We have Office. That's the main thing I think most people want to see. So we have Office here. This is LibreOffice. This is probably the most popular free version or free alternative to Microsoft Office. We have quite a few. We can also install OpenOffice, WPS Office. But again, all of them do the same thing. This is probably the most comprehensive of them all. So we have the LibreOffice main launcher here. Under that, we have LibreOffice Calc, which is spreadsheet stuff. LibreOffice Draw, Impress, which is PowerPoint, LibreOffice Writer, which is Word document. LibreOffice Draw is probably akin to Microsoft Visio. No, not Visual Studio, but Microsoft Visio. A pretty nice looking operating system. If I go to settings as well, this is what it comes up with. Very simple. This kind of reminds me of Android when we used to have these that really nice flat layout when we had these really big buttons. Bluetooth, background, notifications, search, applications. Yeah, I think it's quite straightforward. Nothing here that surprises. And in this one, we have the close, maximize, minimize buttons actually to the right hand of the Windows, which is more reminiscent again of what we're used to from Windows or from Windows 7, 8, 9, sorry, 7, 8, 10. Right, so that is Linux for you guys. And again, I don't have a Wi-Fi adapter to actually plug into this desktop, so I can't show you guys how to install software. But in most cases, for example, on this one, you simply go to the software store because they do have app stores. You click on it, you type the name of the program you want. So for example, if I wanted GIMP or Chrome or Thunderbolt, I think it's called, that email client, go ahead, install, and that's it. You're done and dusted. No issues there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this down. But I do thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, share. And I have quite a few more videos coming out soon. Windows 11 is on the horizon. I'm going to be working on that video. Stay tuned. Peace.